what does the rising share of Eurozone bond purchases by central banks reveal and indicate about the global reserve diversification trends?
Thank you for having me. I agree. This is a very interesting trend. It actually has to go along with the diversification of the foreign exchange reserve by different central banks, particularly Asian and Middle Eastern one, that diversified out of US dollar asset, mostly into gold and euro asset. That has been quite a trend that is accelerating over the last 18 to 24 months. What is telling us? It's telling us that people are start to be concerned about potential inflation risk and so what is called the risk premium on the long-term bond in the US. And as well, the fact that in reality, we live in a more uncertainty world where there is a possibility that we are moving from a unipolar world where the dollar, it is as it is now, the only serious and reliable reserve currency to a multipolar world. So in that case, it makes sense that central bank try to diversify their foreign asset. It's fair to say that even though we are now considering increasing the share of the euro, we are still talking about 20% versus 70% and then 10% in gold. So we're still way, way below the US holding, but it's clearly something to be noticed.
Mm-hmm. So if they are shifting away from the dollar, now, as you've mentioned, central banks are adjusting maybe their portfolios in favor of a euro-dominated debt. Are they focusing more now on long-term maturities?
Okay, let me say, they are not moving away of dollar. I would say at the moment, what we can claim is that they are clearly diversifying. So I wouldn't call it necessary a thumbs down on dollars, but definitely an acknowledgement that the world needs to be, it will be more multipolar and so more diversified. On the term, is clear that on the euro asset, central bank afford to extend their duration because, as we know, ECB has been on the losing trend, so reducing rate for three meetings in a row, whereas the US Fed is holding rates. So there is less risk to extend duration on euro asset than dollar asset. But I would expect that they won't extend duration more than what they have at the moment.
Okay, so maybe they're not shifting away from the dollar, diversifying, as you mentioned. Is there a scenario where the euro can realistically maybe challenge the US dollar's dominance as the world's reserve currency? I mean, maybe even on the long term?
On a very long term is possible, but as my first boss in JP Morgan was telling me, any forecast beyond 6 months is pure academia in financial market. So we always have to mitigate between having a long-term view, but being realistic that things change so fast in financial market that it's very difficult to have a very long-term view. Having said that, every currency, every global reserve currency at an average holding period, let's say an average period in which has been considered the reserve currency of between 25 and 35 years. So basically the average is 30 years. With the pound was the longest one before the dollar for 40 years. Now the dollar is basically been the global reserve currency for over 80 years. So in theory, if history is any guide, we are due for a change. But at the moment, the dollar is still the most stable reserve currency. Frankly, the euro can be, but is at the moment very fragmented. At the moment, there is not necessarily a candidate to replace the dollar, unless we consider something to be in the digital world linked to real asset. That's another history, but not for today. I mean, we have to see.
Yes.